Hey there, it's Diana from Starker's Corsetry, and I'm here to do another video blog about custom made to measure corsets versus off-the-rack corsets. And at Starker's Corsetry, I specialize in entirely custom made to measure corsets, so I will take each client's measurements, usually between about 15 and 20, depending on any asymmetries they might have, at least 15 different measurements to make sure that the corset is drafted to fit their unique bone structure in a way that isn't going to compress the ribs and the hips in an uncomfortable or unhealthy way. And I incorporate those measurements into whatever fabrics my client has chosen, into whatever style they have chosen, and then they have their corset, and it's made to last a lifetime using the highest quality materials I can find. I try to source them as locally as possible. There's not many not many fabrics rather that are made in Canada anymore. There are a couple mills here still. I try to get as many materials as I can in Canada. The ones I can't get in Canada, I will get in the United States or Europe. I will avoid at all costs any materials made in China. I find that at this point the working conditions are so terrible and the quality of the material is so terrible that it's really not worth it. Custom made versus off the rack, kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, to get a little bit more into just general custom made to measure corsets, what makes a custom made to measure corset? Well, as I mentioned earlier, the pattern is drafted for the individual client, and they all start from the pattern on up. And then that client can pick whatever materials they would like, whether it's a leather or a satin or a brocade or something completely different. We've done these in fun fur before, and all kinds of stuff. And there's some custom made to measure corset companies who will also do latex. I don't do latex myself, but there are amazing companies out there who do. The bones in a custom made to measure corset are also going to be very high quality steel bones. Now, I showed you the busk closure in the previous video here. That goes in the front of the corset, as you can see on my friend here. This is how it ends up in the corset here. The custom made to measure corsets will often have a busk. Sometimes they don't, but that's generally the client's own request. For instance, some bridal corsets, they'll opt for maybe some beadwork or applique or something a little fancy on the front that the busk closure would kind of get in the way of. But for sure you'll be having, very high quality steel bones. Now, again, this is the half-inch steel bone that often gets placed right beside the busk here, and the quarter-inch steel bones, which end up in the back of the corset behind the lacing, or beside the lacing, and then the spiral steel, which is also steel bone, just much more flexible, and that goes up the sides so it molds to the ribs and hips in a more flexible way, and also allows for more movement, more comfort in movement, and it doesn't quite dig into the ribs the same way, for instance, one of these would if it was placed right here. Doesn't quite, see what I'm saying? Doesn't quite bend the same way. Not quite. Anyway. And there's more layers in a custom made to measure corset. You'll often have a 4-ply corset. Ours are 4-ply, which means there's the outer layer. I've got another one right here. The outer fabric, in this case it's a plum brocade, and behind the plum brocade there is an interfacing layer which just helps to give the outer fabric a little bit more support. And then there's the coutil layer on the inside of the corset, which you can't see because it's kind of all hidden unless you come in for the fitting, in which case you'll see all the corset bones kind of sticking out of the bottom and all the many layers, and it's a little bit raggedy, but that's when we trim up the edges nicely. So the coutil layer is a very traditional high quality corset fabric that is used in most well-made corsets, and that's the layer on which I trace the pattern and hand stitch, tailor shape the shape of the corset onto, and then I will stitch the outer fabric onto the coutil layer. You with me so far? Probably not. Yeah. Anyway, moving right along, we've got the lining, in which case this is a cotton denim, and that's on the inside, hides all the corset insides, and also there's a waist tape on the inside too that this hides. So the cotton denim just helps to protect the insides of the corset and the steel bones from any sweat or perspiration that might happen, just to help give the corset a longer life. And what else? The back protector in the corset. Now, again, the importance of custom made to measure. This corset was not custom made to measure for this Judy, so as you'll see, the back protector doesn't go all the way across. We've got a bit of a gap there. So there is a back protector under here, and the purpose of the back protector is to cover the skin that's underneath the laces to prevent that ever lovely corset crack that happens all the way back there, and which is less than attractive. And it also just helps to prevent the laces from scraping against the back as the corset is being tightened down. Now, as you can see here it is without the back protector, and then the back protector can go right across. So in well-made, custom-made to measure corsets, you'll have the back protector, and also the grommets on the back. You will have the 2-ply grommets on the back of the corset in custom-made to measure corsets. So as you can see with the inside here, there's the silver washers on the inside, and then the grommets on the outside there, and that helps the laces to slide through nicely and smoothly. Oftentimes with some cheaper ready-made corsets, which I'll get into in a few minutes, you'll have kind of a single ply eyelet, which can kind of open a little bit and catch the lacing and end up fraying the lacing. Now, a lot of fairly reputable custom-made to measure corset makers out there will actually use double-sided ribbon to lace their corsets. Now, I've been using double-sided ribbon for over 20 years now. It's my favorite. I prefer it to the corset cord. I find the corset cord frays far too easily. I find that because there's a cotton content in it oftentimes, it's not quite as durable as the satin ribbon. And also I find the satin ribbon just so much prettier as well. It can come in any color. It's got a nice shine to it. It lies flat. And I've had corsets brought back to me after 17 years where my customer said, okay, I just need new laces after 17 years, which is an amazing thing. It's and of course, I'll give them a new set of laces, but often when I did use the proper corset cording, it would give way often in 5 to 10 wearings, and you can really only get them in black or white. So often ribbon lacing. Some people, again, some very well-known, very reputable custom-made to measure corset companies will use the cording. It's entirely up to the client's preference. Now, the fit and the comfort is the big thing about custom-made to measure corsets. I'm going to turn this around because I don't like this uneven situation here. So, fit and comfort. Now, it's going to be very comfortable. Relatively speaking, it's a corset, it's not yoga gear, right? So it is going to be compressive, but not uncomfortably, not anything that's going to put your ribs or organs at risk in that way. It's going to cup over top of your rib cage and over top of your hip bones. The compression is going to be right in between the bottom of the rib cage and the top of the hip bone. So really just right around there where a tight belt could compress the insides. Almost every time when a client will put their corset on for the first time, they'll say, oh, it feels like a hug. It feels, nice and snug like a hug. It's not uncomfortable at all. So that's the benefit of having a corset that's completely drafted to fit your unique torso and rib cage. Now, also the custom-made corset is often made by the person whose name is on the label. It's made by the corset maker. Everything that has my label on it is made entirely in-house here by me. And there are very few, if any, custom-made to measure corset companies that I know of that outsource their manufacturing or send overseas. Most of them I'm aware of, at least, they manufacture in-house, and if it isn't the person's name on the label, they have very carefully handpicked the person who is actually creating the corsets for their label. And it's, made in-house, usually with a fairly nice living wage. I think a lot of corset houses really try their best to have the best possible working conditions for their team. Now, the downside of custom made to measure corset, we're going to go through the upsides and downsides of all of these. Now, the downside is it can take months to have a properly custom made to measure corset made for you, because there is the long process of pattern drafting and constructing the garment. And you know, the way it is worth it, I find, and a lot of my customers find that it's, you know, it's kind of fun to wait for your corset, and then it's made, and it's, you know it's made for you, and somebody's taken the time to not rush through it and make sure it's absolutely perfect. And also the downside is the price point. Now, custom made to measure corset can be anywhere from probably $300-$400 on up through over $1,000, depending on the corset maker and how long they've been around. You know, how reputable their company is, so that's definitely a factor. Now, the ready-to-wear corsets. There are also a lot of very reputable corset houses who do ready-to-wear corsets, as opposed to custom-made to measure, which I've just explained. Now, the great part about the ready-to-wear corsets is that you can have it right then. You can either pick it up at a store and have it that day, or you can order it online and have it within a week or two, which is great. You can get an idea of how the corset is going to look and feel on you before committing to a custom-made corset if you're not entirely sure that's what you want. And as I said, they're often made by very reputable makers. They'll often be made by the person's name who is on the label. They're often made in-house. The price point is a little bit lower for for ready-to-wear corsets or off-the-rack corsets. They're anywhere from, I would say a good one, anywhere from about $200 to maybe even $500. So some of those price points do overlap. The downside is that they do use a standard pattern. Now, they'll often be sold in either a small, medium, or large, or go by waist size. So for instance, 21-inch waist, 25-inch waist, 30, 40-inch waist, etc. There are limited style and fabric choices. So if they happen to have a fabric that you really like or a style that you really like, great, but you're really limited to what they have available at the time. They may have a great fabric but completely the wrong size. They are not necessarily going to fit you very comfortably. They can often be drafted to, well, they are all drafted to fit one type of shape and one type of rib cage. For example, my ribs sit quite a bit lower than a lot of my clients' ribs would, so an off-the-rack corset would be compressing my bottom ribs something awful, which is really why I learned to make custom-made to measure corsets. I wanted to wear them and I wanted to be comfortable at the same time, and I wanted that to happen all at the same time. So and they're not also not always made to last. Because of the lower price point and just the way that the wearer is going to wear it, because it's not necessarily made to fit them. Either it may be too low on the bust, too high under the arms, or too high at the bottom. It's not going to wear quite as well. There's going to be maybe material rubbing at the wrong spot or that type of thing. But as I said, it's a good place to start if you're not entirely sure you want to wear a corset before committing to a completely custom made to measure. Now there's the ugly, which is the ones that are made in China. We get emails daily from sexy corset manufacturer, that type of thing. Daily we get so many of these offering cheap corsets, often using our photos to sell us corsets, which is really great. Now, a lot of the times you'll see on eBay a beautiful corset for $25, and it's great. I mean, how can you go wrong with $25, right? Well, you can really go quite wrong with $25. With a corset, you get what you pay for. Now, these corsets will often arrive with maybe a single ply, which is just the outer fabric, and maybe a waist tape, and the outer fabric is so cheap and will fall apart after you wear it once. The busk, they'll often have one, but they'll be very cheaply made busks. The grommets on the back will often be just single ply eyelets, and there's often just string, and maybe they'll have a bow in the same place as the photo with which you've ordered. Now, I highly recommend against getting corsets that are made overseas, made it, in China and Pakistan, just simply because the working conditions are completely horrible, and the materials are terrible. The quality of workmanship is terrible. They'll often have plastic bones in them as opposed to the steel bones that I've showed you earlier. Now they'll use many different reputable corset makers' photos on eBay to sell their corsets, and what ends up arriving is not what you've ordered. So how to choose? Well, Google is your friend. Do your own research. Look for a corset that has steel bones, preferably a mix of spiral and flat, like I've showed you earlier. Find something that has busk closure at the front as opposed to a zipper. In my previous video, I had a bit of a zipper tirade, so if you want to know my thoughts on zippers, feel free to watch the other video. The back protectors are also very important. Now, a back protector, some people call it a modesty panel as well. You want at least 2 ply, including a durable lining and a waist tape, preferably a couture layer in the corset. And what else? Also, try to find a custom-made corset, or not necessarily custom-made corset company. I mean, yeah, of course, go with our company. But if you don't want to go with our company, please be sure that you go with a reputable corset house who has been around for a number of years, who has positive reviews, who's easy to contact, who maybe has a phone number available on their website, or their email is easily accessible. You can converse with them personally on Facebook, ask them questions directly. And that's about all I've got. So if you have any questions or comments, you can email me at info@starkers.com. You can like us at Facebook at Starkers Corsetry, all one word. You can tweet to us at Starkers_corset, pardon me, and Instagram at Starkers_corsets. And of course, our website is www.starkers.com. And that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion on custom-made corsets versus ready-made corsets. Thank you.